Hello, person watching this video. I don't really know how to start it, so I'm just gonna get right to it. My name's Lauren Donnell, and I have autism. There's a lot that I want to say about that, so let's talk about it. Also, apologies, as you watch this video, my attire will change at some point because I'm recording this video on 2 different days, so not a YouTuber, just a person. So, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that it occurs in the brain as it develops. The DSM-5 diagnostic term is autism spectrum disorder. If we were still under the DSM-4, I would have been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Some might also say that I'm a high-functioning autistic, although both Asperger's syndrome and functioning labels are both vague and out of date. So now it's just called autism spectrum disorder. But when they say spectrum, they don't mean something like this. They mean something like this. And that's because it's not a simple matter of you're a little autistic or you're highly autistic. It's a myriad of different characteristics, and they're all kind of on their own scales, and everyone falls in a different spot for each of them. The main characteristics of autism are difficulties with communication, difficulties with social interactions, as well as restrictive and repetitive behaviors. The prevalence of autism, according to the CDC's latest data, is 1 in 52, but the ratio between males and females is about 4-1. So for females alone, the rate of autism is 1 in 189. Because it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, it's important for your characteristics to be present in your early childhood, although these characteristics may not fully manifest or be observable until later in development, especially as social demands increase. This is one of the many different reasons why people are diagnosed with autism at all different ages. So in terms of my own experience with autism, I want to start with the social interactions domain. Nonverbal communication has always been a challenge. My nonverbal communication difficulties are usually around facial expressions, understanding tone. I really enjoy sarcasm, but if I don't know you very well and how you generally use facial expressions and tone, I probably will miss it. It's also really hard for me to get a good and accurate first impression of someone. Typically, it takes me a lot longer to kind of form an opinion about someone because I just feel like I don't have enough information. I think that a lot of people on the spectrum would agree with this sentiment, which is being in a social situation, a social gathering, you just feel a bit lost all the time. It's as if everyone walked into the party with a rule book on how to interact with others, how to communicate in this social arena. And you just you didn't get the memo. You didn't get the email, it wasn't sent to you, you didn't get one at the door, you didn't even know there was one, and good luck! Groups are hard. I prefer one-on-one communication. There's a lot less variables. It's easier to focus on just one person. Operating in a group, it's just really difficult to not miss things, especially the things that aren't said, the nonverbals, as well as knowing when it's okay to talk, when to jump in. I'm a person where silence isn't awkward, silence is necessary, because I need to think and process what I want to say before I say it. Group work, obviously no one likes group work, I understand this. However, when you're autistic, it's so hard. Group work is literally so hard for me. It's saying just 2 or 3 comments in a multi-hour seminar in a cohort of people that I know these people. If I could trade that to give a 1-hour lecture to a huge class in a lecture hall, and just me stand at a podium and spew the information. I would far rather do that. And the reason is that when I'm standing up there, I'm in control of the whole situation. I decide when I start talking, when I stop, when I pause. It's all just me. And I get to plan what I want to say ahead of time. It's not that I don't like people, and I think that that's a common misconception about me personally and just autistic people in general. Is just like, oh, you're judgmental, you're stuck up, you don't want to be here, you don't like the company, you don't like these people. That's usually not it at all. I actually really like people. I think they're fascinating. I just don't know how to engage with them as well. I have never been a social butterfly. I've never had a lot of friends at one time, and it's mostly just because I couldn't keep up with it. However, the people that are in my life, maybe I just really, appreciate someone and wish that I was closer to them. Autistic people tend to love hard and love deeply, and I identify that for sure. Even if you're, someone who was very close to me back in high school and I haven't talked to you in 4 years, the affections that I felt for you then are still just as much there. Like, I would still go to bat for you. And I think that's something cool about being on the spectrum, is that even though we show our affections differently and we express ourselves very differently, and that can be confusing to a lot of people or misunderstood by a lot of people, that's a major misconception about autistic people, is that we're just apathetic robots that only care about our special interests and we don't care about your feelings. Me and most of the people from this community, we miss out on relationships, we miss out on connections with people that we could have had just because we didn't know how to, or we didn't even know that we were different. We were sending the wrong signals, and maybe we weren't picking up yours. Okay, next I want to talk about communication. I feel that it's only fair to start with this and to just say it bluntly. Say it for what it is. Why do we do it? Why? What's the point? Just to fill the silence? I like the silence. If you're speaking or asking questions to me and they don't mean anything, like, to you, this is just lazy, automatic, like, you go through the regular things that you say to everyone. But for me, small talk is still work. I still have to think about it and process it and come up with a response. It's grueling, it's painful. And when it's not for anything, then great, I'm wasting my energy, my social energy, which is precious. I never know what to say when someone's like, hi, how are you? That's a multi-layer thing, because some people with autism, me being one of them, it's very hard for us to understand our feelings and emotions and to articulate them. And so when you say, how are you feeling? A lot of the time I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know. How am I feeling? I don't know these things. I think I'm fine. I seem fine. Do you mean like physically or emotionally or mentally? Or like, how was your day? And then I was completely in my mind having, thinking about all of these things, and now you've asked me this question and I have to completely step out of that to answer what you're saying. But in order to answer what you're saying, I need to think about everything that I did today, and it's just like I'm doing all of this gear switching, and you probably don't even care about the answer that much. Which, fair enough, but understand that sometimes small talk takes more effort for some people than it does for others. I suppose if you see me in real life and you want to get me talking, please don't ask like, how's school going? Or how's work? How are you doing? No, don't do that. Just like ask me about astronomy or ancient philosophy or neuroscience or evolutionary psychology, and you will see a very different side of me than you probably have before. It's like small talk is the devil, but asking an autistic person about their special interests is like, you don't even know what you're letting loose. We also need to talk about eye contact. This is incredibly common among autistic people. Eye contact is hard. Maybe you've noticed this in interacting with me, maybe not. I feel as though if you haven't, it's probably because you also suck at eye contact. But here's the thing, it's not that I don't want to look at your face. I love looking at faces. Faces are honestly so beautiful a lot of the time. But I'm gonna look at your face when you're looking in a different direction, preferably while I'm across the room. So I can see your face, enjoy what you look like without having us in a conversation or without you also looking at me, because that adds a lot. So the reason why we don't like eye contact is because eye contact is super overstimulating. It's not that I'm not invested in the conversation, it's that you can have one or the other. For some reason, I cannot do both. And for me personally, I found that it's a lot easier for me to make eye contact while listening to the other person. But for speaking, I cannot make the words come out if I'm looking at your face. Sorry. Also, let's just think about this. Eye contact doesn't really make sense. Like, when people say, you need to look at me so that I know you're listening, those are different senses. Like, that'd be like going to an art museum and having your teacher say, I need you to take out your earplugs so that you can enjoy this painting. I also wanted to discuss modes of communication. For me, personally, phone calls and emails are impossible. Always have been. I've tried to articulate this, and it was really difficult, especially before I was diagnosed, because I was trying to explain, like, no, I just can't. I don't know why, I just can't. I know I really need to send this email to my advisor or to this professor, and I know more or less what I want to say to them. I just can't do it, or I just don't know how. I don't know how to get myself to do it. And I was talking to, it was someone I was dating at the time, and they were like, why don't you, like, just send the email? Everything would be fine, like, you wouldn't be in trouble anymore if you just sent the email. And I said, why don't you just go run 10 miles? I mean, you could do it, your legs work. It might not be fun, but just go do it. Just go run 10 miles. I'd go run 10 miles. I would prefer running 10 miles over sending this 3-sentence email. And I like that analogy a lot. I think it's very fitting, because I think their rebuttal was like, well, you're a runner, like 10 miles is easy for you. First off, still hard. I'm a runner, but like, it's still 10 miles. But also, like, yeah, great. You're good at communicating. So, of course emails are easy for you. It also just really irks me when people don't speak directly. Like when people insinuate things or give like real subtle cues and hope that you catch on. I'm not gonna catch on. I also have a really rough time with lying, or when people say things that they don't mean. Even nice things, like giving someone compliments when they don't actually like the person, that's really confusing to me. I guess if you're wondering if I don't like you, you're probably wrong, because if I didn't like you, it would have been more obvious. I guess with that, it could be appreciated that, like the vast majority of people on the spectrum, I am so honest. I hate lying. I don't think I'm good at it anyways, but my value of integrity and of being transparent as an autistic person, like, I can't switch that off. So whatever I say to you or however I act around you, it is the real deal. Okay, so this isn't one of the 3 main categories of criteria, but it is still one of like the foundations of being on the autism spectrum, and that is sensory issues. So every person on the spectrum is different, but of the 5 senses, you can be either sensory seeking or sensory avoidant. For me, I'm pretty much sensory avoidant on all of them, which I don't like about myself very much, but 'tis what it is. My number one thing of my 5 senses is auditory. I am so sensitive to auditory stimuli. It's annoying. Honestly. I haven't gone to a movie theater since over a decade ago. The only time I go to concerts, which is quite rare, I like to go alone or with maybe one other person, so that if I need to step out or leave entirely, I feel more free to do so. And I wear earplugs always. I actually carry earplugs on my body at all times. And I have multiple pairs of headphones like people wear for like ear protection. It doesn't like play music. I have that too, but that I've had for years. No one knows about, but yep. I think we just thought when I was younger, and I would cry in a movie theater when I was really little, or I would cry when fireworks happened, or my mom would always have to warn me when she was going to turn on the vacuum so that I could go to a different room in a different part of the house. Just all loud sounds I was so aversive to. And I think we just thought I was gonna like grow out of that, but I didn't. Still like this, always going to be, and I think it hasn't been until now that I'm deciding to own that and just accept that this is how I am, and that's not bad. I'm just different. With visual stimuli, it's just light. I just don't like bright lights. When I'm outside, I wear sunglasses all year round. With somatosensory stimuli, it's just like I only wear clothing of certain textures. I'm very particular about that. Ever since I was very, very small, I would have to have the tags cut out of all my clothes or they would bother me. Being overstimulated, I guess, is hard to explain. It's hard to explain what it feels like, but it's a different kind of tired. It always brings on headaches, but they're kind of a different kind of headache too. Okay, so I also need to talk about stimming, because a lot of people don't know about this. Or you probably do, you just don't know that that's what it's called. So stimming is something that all people do, not just autistic people. However, it's usually more prominent and more obvious among autistic individuals. It stands for self-stimulatory behavior, but the stereotypical like hand flapping, rocking, pacing, I stim all the time, but it isn't obvious because the stims that I prefer are just not as noticeable, I guess. I bounce my legs all the time. I also rock, but I try to save it for when I'm not in public, just because I know how it looks. There's also other things like pacing and finger patterns. all that jazz. I'll do that too. So, burnout is a thing too. Um, Burnout is basically when you're sensory overloaded, you've been masking too long, um, you've been, you know, suppressing your stems. There's a lot of reasons for burnout, but basically it just means like you're super tired, you can't do anything else. You just hide under a blanket in the dark for a good while until you feel able to do things again. And it kind of sucks, especially when like there might be other things going on that you genuinely do really want to do or want to be a part of, but you're burnt out, you're spent. I'm of course naturally an introvert. I know that that's part of my personality outside of autism. There are extroverted autistic people too. I'm just not one of them. But I guess it's sort of like that, how an introvert needs alone time, but on steroids. Just like hiding from the world until your brain feels better. Alright, I think this is probably one of my least favorite parts about being autistic, and that is shutdowns and selective mutism. They're terrible. It is what it sounds like. Just picture from the movie Get Out, the sunken place. That is a shutdown. You're conscious of what's happening around you, but you truly you can't do anything. You can't talk. Sometimes you can't move your body. So it's like if I'm in a really stressful environment and I'm there long enough, or I've been masking for too long, you reach a tipping point and you're done, whether you want to be or not. I think it's even worse when I'm with other people, or just with someone, and I'm feeling a really strong, and it's like I just can't, like, my brain doesn't know what to do. There's too many feelings. So I might really need to talk it out with this person. Maybe we're like having a conversation about things related to these feelings, and they don't love it when you shut down into yourself and can no longer engage in the conversation. And so selective mutism is part of that. I actually suspected that I had selective mutism years before I was diagnosed with autism, just because it's not, when it happens, it's not that I'm shy. I think that shy connotes fear. You're afraid of this social interaction. You're afraid to talk to this person. That's not it at all. With selective mutism, it's not up to you. It's like the words will sit in your throat. You'll have the words in your mind, like, this is exactly what I want to say. I should really say it right now. And they don't come out. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you can't force the words out. So that's fun. There are a lot of comorbidities with autism, like a lot. I have several of them. As a child, I was very anxious, mostly because I was autistic but didn't know it. The comorbidity that I experience the hardest is depression. This was something that I feel as though I would have gotten regardless of if I was autistic or not, just because I'm so genetically predisposed to it. However, everyone in my family kind of experiences depression one way, and then my autistic brain just took it in a whole different direction. Depression has been a major part of my life pretty much since I entered adulthood, since I started college. I think the depression and the autism just kind of piggyback off of each other, because not only am I depressed just because I probably would have gotten depression at some point anyhow, but also, like, when you're autistic, there are reasons to be depressed. It is so... There's a reason why it's called Other Planet Syndrome. It truly feels like everyone is just on a different wavelength than you, and you constantly have to spend every hour of your life trying to adapt, blend in, fit in, excel in a system that is not designed for people like you. That's a pretty decent cause, a pretty decent justification for depression. I've also struggled for years with disordered eating, which a lot of people don't know about, suicidality. Yep. I've been hospitalized before. I've struggled with self-harm for years also, mostly because of being autistic and not knowing it. And this isn't any type of like clinical comorbidity, but perfectionism. I am very much perfectionist, and it's a pretty common trend I've seen in the autistic community. It's just that I can't half-ass anything. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what task I'm trying to do, how minuscule it might seem. I have to do it a certain way or I can't do it. It's impossible. If someone said, hey, I need you to mop this floor, but we're in a hurry, so like doesn't need to be perfect. Just get the most of it. Yeah, no, that's not an option for me. I will get every single square centimeter. It will all be cleaned the same amount, and it will be spotless, or I will not do it at all. Yes, I'm smart. I've always gotten good grades and taken hard classes, but the time it takes me to do a simple assignment has always been more than my other classmates. So having issues with executive functions is pretty typical for autistic people. Mine are quite pronounced. So, for example, my formal diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder level 1 with associated executive dysfunction. What that means is like making decisions takes so long. I'm so indecisive, always have been. Initiating a task, so hard sometimes. It's not that I don't want to do the thing. I do very much want to do the thing. And I'm trying very, very hard to do the thing. But I cannot. I also struggle with a lot of schedule changes. I like consistency. And if you make plans with me, please try to keep them. Don't cancel last minute or change plans last minute, because I've probably been planning and preparing for a long time. I'm thinking about making a few more videos. I think one about just the signs of my autism growing up, as well as I'm really interested in making a video about misconceptions and kind of setting some things straight that I've encountered a lot. Anyways, thanks for listening.